My name is Linda Reed. I am 61 years old, and if someone had told me a year ago that I would be driving through Charleston's empty streets at 11 o'clock at night, with my hands trembling on the steering wheel and my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, I would have laughed. But that night, nothing was funny. Jonathan, my husband of 38 years, had always been the steady one, the reliable man everyone admired, the kind of husband who brought flowers every Friday, who never forgot an anniversary, who made people say, "You're so lucky, Linda." I used to believe that too, until that night. It began just 3 hours earlier. I had driven past his office tower, the glass and steel building where he worked as chief financial officer for one of Charleston's largest firms. The parking lot was empty, the lights were off, and a bright orange sign on the door read, "Closed for renovations, effective 6 p.m. For a moment I thought I had the wrong address. But no, there was the company logo shining faintly in the streetlight. I felt a chill crawl up my neck. I called him, trying to sound casual. "Hey honey, how's the Tokyo project going?" His answer came smooth and practiced. "Super busy, sweetheart. Don't wait up for me, okay? It's another late night." Then I heard it. A soft laugh. A woman's voice in the background. The world seemed to tilt. My fingers tightened around the phone, but I forced myself to smile even though he could not see me. "Of course," I said, "work hard." When the call ended, I just sat there for a long moment, frozen, the phone still pressed to my ear. Then, almost automatically, I opened the family GPS app. The blue dot that marked Jonathan's car was moving not toward the office, but away from downtown, toward the suburbs. A neighborhood we had never been to together. Every mile I drove that night peeled away another layer of denial. When I finally reached the place, it was a street lined with oak trees and perfect lawns, every house glowing softly under warm porch lights. His silver Mercedes sat in front of a navy blue 2-story home with white shutters and a swing on the porch. There was a mailbox painted with sunflowers and a neat sign that read, "The Foster Family." I parked 3 houses down, my hands shaking so badly I could barely turn off the engine. Somewhere inside that house, my husband was living another life. I stayed in the car, my body frozen, eyes fixed on the navy blue house at the end of the street. It looked peaceful, like a picture from a family magazine. The porch lights glowed softly, and the sound of wind chimes floated in the night air. But for me, the scene felt like a nightmare painted in pastel colors. At first, nothing happened. The curtains were closed, the street silent except for the distant hum of crickets. I kept telling myself I had made a mistake, that maybe Jonathan was helping a client, maybe he was visiting someone from work. But deep down, I already knew the truth. Then the curtain on the second floor moved. A woman appeared, maybe in her early 40s. She wasn't young, but she had the kind of effortless grace that comes from confidence. Her hair was tied up in a loose bun, and she wore a silk robe the color of midnight blue. My stomach turned when I realized it was the same design as the one Jonathan had given me last Christmas, except mine was wine red. She leaned against the window, looking out with a relaxed smile, as if she had everything she ever wanted. Then, a boy about 9 years old ran up behind her. He had dark, wavy hair, the exact shade of Jonathan's, and when he turned his head, I saw the same dimple, the same way of tilting his chin when curious. My chest tightened so hard I could barely breathe. My phone vibrated. A text from Jonathan. "Leaving the office now, love. Don't wait up." The audacity almost made me laugh. Almost. I sat there until nearly dawn, watching the lights in that house go out one by one. The woman disappeared from the window, the boy's room went dark, and silence took over again. Around 6 in the morning, Jonathan's Mercedes was gone. Only then did I drive home, numb and hollow, like a ghost behind the wheel. When I walked into our kitchen, the smell of fresh coffee greeted me. Jonathan was standing there in his work shirt, holding a box of donuts Boston cream, my favorite. He smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "Morning, sweetheart. Long night at the office. Grabbed your favorite on the way back." His performance was perfect, but now I could see the actor behind the mask. I smiled back at him that morning, the same smile I had worn for almost 4 decades. My hands didn't shake, and my voice didn't break. "You're too thoughtful," I said, pouring coffee into his favorite mug. He hummed while reading the morning paper, as if nothing in the world was out of place. I studied him in silence, the calm expression, the well-practiced gestures, the familiar smell of aftershave. While he showered, I opened his briefcase. Inside, everything seemed ordinary. Financial reports, a pen, a small notebook. But then I found a hidden zipper compartment. Inside it was a phone I had never seen before. My pulse quickened. The screen lit up with several missed calls and one unread text. "Daddy, don't forget my soccer game on Saturday. Mommy says you promised. Love, Jalen." The message burned into my mind. Another woman, another child, another life. I put everything back exactly where it was before, then looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back seemed unfamiliar, eyes tired but sharper now. Something inside me had shifted. The wife who once believed every word was gone. The rest of that week, I began seeing patterns I had ignored for years. The unexpected jewelry receipt he claimed was for his boss's secretary. The shopping bags from stores I'd never heard of. The business trips that always lasted exactly 3 or 4 days. The time our daughter Rachel said she saw him at the mall with a woman and a small boy. I had brushed it off, saying he was probably helping a coworker. How many times had I chosen to believe lies because the truth was too painful? I wasn't stupid, I was loyal. I was the kind of wife who kept the family together, even if it meant breaking herself in the process. But now, something was awake, something that couldn't be put back to sleep. The next few nights, I followed him again using the GPS app. Every time he claimed to be working late, his car ended up in that same neighborhood, parked in front of the blue house. He wasn't even careful anymore. That was the moment I stopped being afraid. I realized that night that I had spent 40 years loving a man who never really existed, and if he could create an entire second life built on lies, then so could I, but mine would be built on truth. The next morning, I made an appointment with a private investigator. His name was David Sterling, a man in his late 50s with a tired but intelligent look in his eyes. He had once worked for the FBI, and now he specialized in cases involving fraud and marital deception. When I sat down in his office, surrounded by shelves of old case files, he simply said, "Tell me everything." I did. Every detail, from the blue house to the second phone, from the woman's robe to the child, who looked like my husband's reflection. When I finished, he leaned back, folded his hands, and asked quietly, "Are you sure you're ready to know the truth? Because once you start, there's no going back." "I'm ready," I said, and for the first time I meant it. 2 weeks later, Sterling came to my house. He placed a thick folder on my kitchen table, the same table where Jonathan and I had celebrated birthdays and holidays for nearly 40 years. "You might want to sit down," he said. Inside the folder were photographs, legal documents, and bank statements. The first page made my heart stop. A marriage certificate. Marcus Foster married Candace Foster 12 years ago. Jonathan's face smiled from the photo, only the name was different. He had created a new identity, complete with forged documents and tax records. "It's not an affair," Sterling explained gently. "It's bigamy. Your husband has been living as 2 different men for over a decade." I stared at the picture of Jonathan and Candace on their wedding day. She wore a simple white dress, barefoot on a beach, and he looked younger, lighter, as if the burden of his real life had never existed. There were birth certificates to Jalen Foster, born 11 years ago, and a baby girl, Sky, born just 6 months earlier. He had built another family from the ground up. "How did he manage all of this?" I whispered. "Through precision," Sterling said. 2 separate bank accounts, 2 businesses, 2 tax identities. He used your inheritance to finance it all. Candace believes she's married to a widower. He told her you died in a car crash 15 years ago. I couldn't speak. The man I had loved for nearly 4 decades hadn't just betrayed me, he had erased me. But sitting in that silence, I didn't cry. I only felt a calm, cold determination settle in my chest. For the first time, I wasn't going to be the one who forgave. I was going to be the one who finished this story. That night, I sat alone in the living room with the folder open on my lap. The photos, the documents, the signatures, all of it stared back at me like ghosts of a life that was never real. I could hear Jonathan upstairs snoring, safe in his lies, while I sat surrounded by the evidence of his double life. The woman who once cried quietly into her pillow was gone. What replaced her was someone colder, quieter, sharper. The next morning, I called my son, Ethan. He's a corporate attorney in Atlanta, sharp-minded and steady, the kind of man his father always wanted him to be. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked when he heard my voice. "No," I said simply, "but I will be. I need your professional help." 2 hours later, he was sitting across from me at a cafe downtown, flipping through Sterling's report. His face changed from disbelief to fury. "This isn't just infidelity," he said. "It's bigamy, fraud, and embezzlement. He used your inheritance, your money, to fund this second life. We can bury him legally." "I don't want him in jail," I said quietly. "Not yet. I want him to lose everything he values first: his reputation, his control, his mask." Ethan looked at me differently then. "You've got a plan, don't you?" "I do," I said, "but I need your help and your sister's." Rachel joined us that evening. She worked in public relations for a national firm, skilled at controlling narratives and destroying them. When she finished reading the file, she was shaking. "He's been lying to all of us," she said. "Every holiday, every business trip. How could he look us in the eyes?" I placed my hand on hers. "We're not going to destroy him with rage, Rachel. We're going to do it with truth." The plan took form piece by piece. Ethan would prepare the legal side, freeze the assets, contact the IRS, and secure every document tying Jonathan to his crimes. Rachel would quietly plant the seeds in the media, a few whispers online, an anonymous inquiry about a businessman named Marcus Foster who looked suspiciously like Jonathan Reed. And I would keep playing my role, the perfect, trusting wife, until the night I would end his performance forever. Our 40th wedding anniversary was in 6 weeks. Jonathan had already booked a grand dinner party at one of Charleston's finest restaurants. That night would be his celebration and his collapse. The restaurant Jonathan chose for our anniversary was called the Golden Swan, an elegant place overlooking the harbor, with chandeliers that looked like captured starlight and tables dressed in ivory linens. It was the kind of venue people used for milestone celebrations, weddings, retirements, anniversaries. He wanted the world to see the picture of a perfect marriage. I was going to give him that picture before I shattered it. I arrived early. The staff greeted me with polite smiles, unaware of the storm that would soon break in their polished dining room. I wore a deep crimson dress that hugged my figure, the color of both love and blood. Around my neck was my mother's diamond pendant, the one Jonathan had always claimed didn't match my style. Tonight, it wasn't about style, it was about armor. By the time Jonathan arrived, the room was filled with guests, business partners, friends, our children, and a few journalists Rachel had quietly invited under the pretense of covering a successful couple's legacy. He looked radiant in his navy suit, his silver hair freshly cut, his smile as charming as ever. He took my hand and whispered, "You look stunning, Linda. How do you still take my breath away after 40 years? If he only knew. Dinner began with champagne and laughter. He was in his element, telling stories, shaking hands, being admired. When the desserts were served, he stood gently tapping his glass with a spoon. The music faded, and all eyes turned to him. "My dear friends and family," he began, his voice full of warmth. 40 years ago, I met the woman who changed my life. Linda has been my anchor, my best friend, and my reason for everything I've achieved. Tonight I want to honor her." A small box appeared in his hand, a blue velvet one. "Linda, will you do me the honor of being my wife for another 40 years? The crowd gasped and applauded. Someone shouted, "Say yes." I stood smiling, pretending my heart wasn't pounding with the weight of truth. I kissed his cheek softly and said, "Thank you, Jonathan. But before I answer, I have something special to share too." I took out my phone and pressed a button. The speakers came alive with Jonathan's own voice. "Candace, my love, I'm heading home now. Don't worry, Linda still thinks I'm stuck at the office. After all these years, she never suspects a thing." The room froze. The color drained from his face. I continued, my tone calm but sharp as glass. "But that's not all." The projector lit up. On the screen appeared the wedding photo, Jonathan and Candace on a beach, smiling like newlyweds. Then came the birth certificates, the family photos, the financial documents, each revelation cutting deeper than the last. The audience gasped, some covered their mouths, others whispered his name like it was poison. Ethan stepped forward, holding a folder. "Mr. Reed," he said coldly, "these are divorce papers and evidence of financial fraud. If you refuse to sign, this entire case goes public and the FBI will handle what remains." Jonathan's hand shook as he took the pen. The man who once controlled every detail now had nothing left to control. The sound of his signature was the quietest and loudest thing I'd ever heard. By sunrise, Charleston was buzzing with the scandal. The story spread faster than wildfire. "Prominent CFO exposed for living double life," the headlines read. The photos Rachel had prepared, the ones from his secret wedding, the blue house, the 2 children, were everywhere. Jonathan's world collapsed in less than 24 hours. His company released a statement by noon announcing his immediate suspension pending investigation for fraud and ethical violations. Business partners withdrew their support, clients canceled contracts, and the board of directors voted to terminate him before the week ended. Every interview request came with one question: how could a man build an empire on deceit? I stayed silent. I had no need to explain. The truth spoke for itself. Jonathan tried calling, texting, even showing up at the gate of our house. I didn't answer. Ethan had already frozen the accounts. The IRS seized his business records, and his so-called consulting firm, the one under the name Marcus Foster, was exposed as a shell company used for laundering and tax evasion. He had nowhere left to run. Candace, his second wife, found out the same morning the world did. She called me, her voice trembling. "Is it true?" she asked. "Are you his real wife?" "Yes," I said quietly. "And I'm sorry you had to find out like this. You didn't deserve it any more than I did." She began to cry. "He told me you died. He said you were gone." "I was," I replied, "but now alive again." Candace left him that night, taking her children to her sister's home. For the first time, I didn't feel hatred, just pity for her, for the children, and even, in a strange way, for him. Jonathan had destroyed everyone who loved him, including himself. He spent the next few weeks in hiding. Reporters found him living in a small rental apartment outside the city, paying in cash, avoiding cameras. He looked nothing like the confident man who once ruled boardrooms and dinner parties. The mirror of his own lies had finally turned on him. And me? I slept through the night for the first time in years. No more pretending. No more waiting for a door to open or a lie to unfold. The silence that filled my home was not emptiness, it was peace. After the storm came the quiet, the kind of silence that doesn't ache anymore, but soothes. I sold the house where my marriage had died long before I admitted it. I moved into a small waterfront condo in downtown Charleston, where I could hear the gulls in the morning and watch the sunsets paint the sky gold at dusk. For the first time in my life, every decision was mine. I unpacked boxes I hadn't opened in decades. Inside one, I found my old sketchbooks, brushes, and half-dried tubes of paint. The smell of the canvas brought tears to my eyes. I remembered the girl I used to be, the one who once dreamed of studying art in Paris before Jonathan convinced her that family came first. I set up an easel by the window and began to paint again. It started awkwardly, my hands stiff from years of neglect, but soon the colors began to flow. Every brushstroke felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that had been buried under his lies. Within months, I had a full collection, paintings that told a story of silence, awakening, and rebirth. I called the series Portraits of a Vanished Life. Rachel helped organize an exhibition at a local gallery. The night it opened, I stood surrounded by my own work, hearing people's whispers, their praise, their quiet awe. One man approached me, a retired literature professor named Michael Grant. "Your paintings," he said softly, "they're full of sorrow, but also of courage. It's as if they're breathing." I smiled. "They're learning to," I replied. We had coffee that night, then dinner a few days later. Michael was gentle, kind, nothing like the man I'd once married. He didn't try to fix or lead me, he simply listened. There was no rush, no pretense, no promises. Just two people who understood that love after loss isn't about starting over, it's about continuing differently. One morning, while preparing for another exhibition, I found an envelope hidden inside an old book. It was a letter from my late mother, written years ago but intercepted by Jonathan. "My dearest Linda," it read, "if you are reading this, it means you finally found the truth. I left you a separate account he never knew about. Use it to live freely. Live the life you once dreamed of." The next week, I'd booked a flight to Paris, not to escape but to begin. I landed in Paris on a quiet spring morning. The city looked exactly as I had imagined it 40 years ago, alive, unpredictable, full of stories waiting to be painted. I rented a small studio apartment overlooking the Seine, with tall windows that let in the soft golden light of dawn. The walls were bare, the air smelled of turpentine and rain, and for the first time in decades I felt at home. Every day I painted until my hands ached. I painted the woman I had been, the silent wife, the trusting fool, the one who smiled through heartbreak. I painted the moment I woke up in that car outside the Blue House. I painted the fire inside me that had refused to die. And finally I painted the woman I had become, calm, strong, and free. Michael came to visit that summer. We walked through Montmartre, drank cheap wine, and listened to street musicians playing violins near the river. He never once asked about Jonathan, and I never brought him up. Some stories are not meant to be retold, they are meant to be outlived. A few months later, Rachel called. Dad tried to reach us, she said. He's out of prison now. He wants to see the family. I stayed silent for a moment. And what did you tell him? I told him we already have a family, she said firmly. I smiled. She had inherited my strength, the kind I once didn't know I had. Sometimes Patricia, his sister, sends me updates. Jonathan works as an accountant now, living in a one-bedroom apartment outside Savannah. Candace never took him back. The children are growing well, shielded from his shame. He's alive, but he's no longer the man who could hurt anyone. And me? I'm finally living. My paintings are now part of a charity foundation for women starting over after betrayal. Every sale funds new beginnings for others who, like me, lost years believing lies. Before I left Charleston, I looked into the mirror one last time. The woman staring back wasn't broken anymore. Her wrinkles told stories of survival, her gray hair shimmered like silver threads of wisdom. "Hello, Linda," I whispered. "It's good to finally meet you." If my story reaches you tonight, remember this: the truth may break you, but it also sets you free. If you found strength in Linda's journey, don't forget to like, share, and tell me where you're watching from. Because here, on The Art of Revenge, every ending can still become a beginning.